Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. At last, 2020 elections are over. We have been talking about it for last several weeks because this has been a remarkably unprecedented election. The outcome is still not clear, although it appears that Mr. Biden is closer to the finish race in terms of delegates as well as his popular vote, but the matter is not over. In an amazing twist of things, uh, Florida, Texas, Ohio, the battleground states, Mr. Trump won with significant vote transfer of Latinos and Blacks, at least in these couple of states. But the other 5 battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and a couple of other states, Georgia for that matter, which are all Democrat-run states, the entire thing has become a different ball game altogether, which prompted me to put a tweet just before coming on the show today that it's time for the United States to have an entity like the Election Commission of India to conduct federal elections. It appears rather ridiculous that such a great country with so many democratic institutions doesn't have a federal institution to conduct presidential election. This is just my thought, that the elections are controlled by the state legislatures and they lay down the policies. It beats me that how can a presidential election be a subject matter of state, though people vote. In India, we had more than 600 million people vote in 2019 election. Everybody had an ID. The question of voter suppression didn't arise. And everybody had an ID and everybody could vote. And there was a very simple rule that if you are voting, professionals working elsewhere or military people voting, or you are not in place, your mail-in ballot has to reach on the polling day. It has to be counted. The results announced as on the designated days. In the US, it has become a joke. And that's what I said in my tweet, that it almost looks like instead of being an example to the world, we look like a sad joke. Our exceptionalism doesn't look good at this point in time. So whether democracy is threatened, or as Mr. Trump said, the stealing of election is going on, there is considerable doubt. Thanks to technology, we are able to access information. We are privy to information almost on an instantaneous basis. And it also throws up a different kind of a challenge. When Twitter, Facebook ban your posts because they don't agree with you, or you are saying something that they find offensive. So Mr. Trump's tweet account he was not allowed to tweet many times. So to discuss all these matters, I have great pleasure in welcoming 4 very good speakers and thoughtful people. And we will share their thoughts. So to begin with, I have great pleasure in welcoming back Mohan Sonti. Mohan is a systems software architect, and he works for Raytheon. I have great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Bhavani Srinivasan. Bhavani, welcome. Bhavani is a pediatrician and also a public policy health expert. Mr. Rakesh Kaul, a dear friend, and we share a lot of things in commonality, only a few. He's an author, he's an entrepreneur, he has been in corporate world in America for a long number of years, and he has just released his 3rd book on Kashmir and its history. And then I have the last gentleman is today, Dr. Rakesh Sharma. He's an expert who has he's the chief of medicine in one of the major hospitals in Smithtown, and also director of ICU, intensive care units, where he expanded the capacity of his ICU from 23 to 43 to attend to corona patients. So gentlemen and lady, let's begin this conversation with your 2-minute shot on what you are seeing unfold a day after election and what is going on here. 3rd of 3rd of November, the elections were held. We are now on Saturday, and the chaos doesn't seem to be ending. And the matter is going to the courts, as Mr. Trump has said. So Mohan, let me begin with you. Your thoughts.
I think these elections are, in my opinion, are certainly a complete fraud. The reason I think so is multiple reasons, actually. One of them is, if you look at the percentage of votes given in all these battleground states, for example, Wisconsin has traditionally voted about 67 in 2016. To the last 50 years, it went to a max of 73% polling. But this time it is 90%. That's 25% more. And then you get a whole stash of votes, which are overwhelmingly in favor of Biden. So if you look at both the percentage of how many people have voted and how they got the stack of votes, I think this whole election process is completely rigged. So I think democracy is kind of in danger at this point. I think they did everything in all the other places, but in battleground states, they waited till the last day when the votes are counted, and then they padded it with more. That's what I felt. So I think that democracy at this point is in danger. If this is how it works, then the whole country is going to be blue, and we don't need elections anymore in a few more election cycles. That's how I feel.
I would also, from time to time, I will be the devil's advocate here today. But we are all referring to data and news appearing on mainstream media and internet. And one of the things that somebody said, where is the evidence of what you accuse? I'll come back to you on that later.
Yeah,
I'm coming back to Rakesh Kaul. Rakeshji, there was a very nice statement dangerous statement, not I wouldn't say nicest statement, but a very pertinently dangerous statement by Joseph Stalin, that the voters don't win you elections, it is those who count win you elections. So it appears that while Mr. Trump was trying to win the election, the Democratic Party was trying to make sure that the states that they control, especially in battleground states, they controlled the counting process. So that's truly remarkable, and it bothers me. It bothers me for more reasons than one. Is that, as a sportsman, I know that sometimes people commit professional fouls, as it is called. There is no consequence. What is happening here is what I find is that in democratic institutions, people are abusing the law and getting away with it in the name of the law. Your thoughts?
So, Vibhuti, thank you first for having me on the show. I want to wish all of your viewers a very safe journey as we navigate through these tough times. I'm going to present a slightly different thesis for your consideration, and I'm going to present a point of view that rises above the partisan issues that are roiling us up, Democrat, Republican, Biden.
Just come closer
Trump.
to the mic, Rakeshji.
Sure.
Yeah, this is better. Yeah.
And I'm going to submit the thesis that the biggest winner out of this electoral process was the Indo-American community. And let me submit 3 data points for you. Number one data point is that when you look at the Indo-American community, separate from the 4 members of the Samosa Club, who all returned back, but separate from them, we had about 15 Indo-Americans who got elected into the state assemblies. And so now the number of elected officials across America that we have exceeds 100. When you compare that with the Arab Americans or the Muslims or any other community, we have done exceptionally well. Number 2 data point. This was accomplished. Impact has put out a statement that they estimate that the Indo-American community raised about $10 million. Some of it probably went to the presidential candidates. So maybe part of it went to support our own Indo-American candidates. Ladies and gentlemen, I will submit that that was probably the best return on political capital. There was total carnage. Silicon Valley contributed 200 million to Biden's campaign and got nothing for it. Um, Mayor Bloomberg contributed over 100 million for Florida, got nothing for it. So we got a bang for the buck. And the reason that's important is that when the next go round comes, Indo-Americans will put more money behind it because they've tasted success. And in the 4 battleground states, there were 500,000 Indo-American voters. And so that wasn't lost on the 2 major political parties. I mentioned these 3 points, but I'll also talk about one data point where we didn't win. And that's the case of my home state of New Jersey, where Rick Mehta went in a Senate race toe-to-toe against Cory Booker. He got 38% of the votes. And just compare Cory Booker's national recognition versus Rick Mehta. And Rick Mehta got 38% as a Republican candidate. So to me, I think Indo-Americans have arrived, and they couldn't have arrived at a better time. And that's my last point.
That's absolutely correct. And I'm very glad you brought the Indo-American dimension to the conversation.
Because we are selfish. Now, let me close it so that I don't exceed my time. America is going to end up with a centrist government. In Indian terms, we call it a coalition dharma. The presidential powers will be clipped by the Senate, and so it'll be coalition dharma. And in the coalition dharma, this Indo-American community of legislators can play a very vital role, and I'll stop right there. But my net conclusion is, in terms of gain of power, because at the end of that's what it's all about. It's about political power. The Indo-American community came out as big winners. How we use this power, we'll talk about later.
That's wonderful. Thank you for introducing a completely new dimension to the conversation, the gloom of Mr. Trump in a not winning, to a positivity of the Indo-American community. And I was going to talk about that for sure, because that is something important. Because from Nassau, this New York District 16, the winner is a young lady called Ragini Srivastava on Republican ticket. I know her personally well, and she has won in New York Assembly, beating a Democrat in a remarkably powerful constituency, making up of Port Washington, Great Neck, Manhasset, West Hempstead, Upper Brookville, Old Westbury, a very powerful area. And she's representing. So more on that later. And I definitely am glad about that I have said that for the first ever time, Indian American community seems to have developed a clout amongst the mainstream political parties. So coming back to that, Bhavani, I'd like to hear your thoughts, because I believe in one thing is the match is over, and the next match we have to prepare for, which is again 2022, which is right around the corner. And 4 years go by in a matter of, blinking your eye. It seems like 2016, my God, 2016, 4 years ago, seems to have just gone by. But Bhavani, one of the things which I wanted to check with you is that people complained about Mr. Trump's behavior. I don't call behavior as a problem. It can be an issue, but not a problem. I make a distinction between the element. I may not like your behavior, doesn't make you a bad person. You have intention to do something. But one thing which I noticed that while Mr. Trump consolidated his base remarkably well, he didn't win over anything else other than that. And I have often said that I wish Mr. Trump had taken the leaf out of Prime Minister Modi's friendship to learn learn something from the Modi School of Political Economy, where he should have learned how to manage his opposition. And the entire India talks about Rahul Gandhi as the biggest ally of Modi. Think about it. He called him all kinds of names. And despite calling him names, Modi, when he met Modi once, he told him in Hindi, "Milte rahiye," which means keep meeting. And there were such powerful two words that after that, Rahul Gandhi had not met him, because it created such a wonderful divide that people noticed that there is no comparison between the two. So that chastened Rahul Gandhi. And another part, Farooq Abdullah challenged Modi. You will never be able to remove 370 and 35A in 100 years. Guess what he did? Didn't say a word. Removed it, and then didn't say a word. Now think about who is eating crow and who is running to China. Likewise, like Mr. Trump, he made allies and he made enemies with his pronouncements. And that I thought was a strategic error in his behavioral element. So for example, when he said that he will abolish Section 230 of the FEC code, which would have put restrictions and liability issue on the famous 5 major companies who are in the social media domain, they also became his enemy. So he need not have had to say that. He could have quietly done it, either through a presidential executive action, or he could have done it after election, keep quiet until then. Why raise the bogey? So how are you feeling? Because you were a big supporter of Mr. Trump. So how are you feeling about the whole accusation of stealing the election? And what positive do you draw from that?
Well, first we have to talk about, as you mentioned rightly about Mr. Trump, the way he talks and so on. But I think one has to look beyond the rhetoric. We all know that he comes from Queens, and he's been a real estate mogul, and I guess he had to talk that way to get things done, in that sphere. And you have to remember also that he has never held a government office. See, the moment you do hold office, you learn a few things, you learn, what you should say, and very importantly, what not to say. And that's where Mr. Modi, he has literally gone through the ranks, if you remember, and he has already been chief minister of Gujarat. So he knew really how to phrase things and how to manage people and places. My grandmother always had a saying, that, in Tamil, this is in Tamil, and she would say, instead of calling the cow an animal, call it, by its graceful name. So, sometimes, it's the words, how you have to be sometimes a wordsmith in politics. And yes, it is very important to keep people on your side. But he didn't mean anything. He was just being a brash New Yorker. That's what he was being. And people don't understand, those people who have not been in contact with New Yorkers, up close and personal, they initially they didn't know what to make of it. And afterwards they started taking umbrage. Which is not what he intended, I'm sure. And also you have to, as I said, when you look beyond the rhetoric, look at everything that he has actually done. And he has done for the country. And also, that he really, truly loves America. That came across when you saw him at a rally after rally. It was something that was palpable, and those crowds felt it. I don't know whether you saw the last couple of days when he was having rallies just the night before the election. The crowd actually started chanting, "We love you, we love you." When have they said that? I can't ever remember a whole crowd of 25,000 people. They came to Minneapolis airport, and only 250 people were allowed onto the tarmac with social distancing and masks and so on. And 25,000 people were outside. And he went outside to meet all the 25,000 because he heard that they were all waiting outside. And they all started chanting, "I love you." That is, and so there, I mean, like, even though he talks in a particular way, and he really doesn't come across in a polished manner. The other problem was that he succeeded Obama. Obama was the consummate elocution person. He spoke so beautifully and so eloquently and everybody, it was like you were like, you just wanted, I wanted to hear more every time, he started talking. So, this was such a stark contrast to that. So I think it was all the more, people felt the difference even more so. And then coming back to your other point, about the elections in India, I was thinking the same thing, that they really should have an election czar here, and maybe they should have somebody for, at Washington, and they appoint people for all the states, because as you know, in the US, each state has its own way and its own rules and regulations, and they're not beholden to the federal government to do whatever they do. So if you had this person appointed 50 officials in each state, then according to each time zone, you could have the elections. In India, they do state by state. We have 26 states. And so by a month, you're done. At the end of the month, they're able to declare the election results. Here, you would have to do it, I think, by time zones, so that, you could start with, say, California first, and tally and collate all that. And everything is then kept in a reserve, maybe like the Federal Reserve somewhere, and then you would have the mountain states, then you could have central zone states, and then finally the eastern states. Alaska and Hawaii could go together, perhaps, and one person could overlook those results, collating it. And then finally, so this could be done, say, Tuesday. We normally start our elections on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 zones, Saturday, Alaska and Hawaii. And then by the weekend, you're done. So Sunday and Monday, they sit down, they collate all the results, and the following Tuesday, the winner is declared. I thought something like that. That would be organized.
I'm 100% sure that there would be a rethink on the election process, the way it goes. But Sharmaji, coming to you, there was one thing which is, you observe oddities on certain things. And I believe, and not me alone, but many people believe, that this was the weakest ever democratic ticket. A 78-year-old man with 47 years of living in the swamp, DC and Delaware, who was 8 years as vice president of Mr. Obama. So every time he's opened his mouth about an American problem, I had only one question to ask him as a journalist, as an inquirer, or as a banker or a political analyst, is, what did you do about that? This was the weakest team, in my opinion, that ever faced the election. And they did not even campaign satisfactorily, properly. There was somebody who was calling the shots in the entire Democratic Party. He kept him off. Both the candidates, Kamala Harris and VP Biden, fumbled remarkably poorly on their presidential debates and campaigns. Biden didn't even win first 4 of the primaries and caucuses. He was mumbling and fumbling in these debates. Overrun. Kamala Harris had a pathetic exit from the presidential campaign. When 2 people of this kind are contesting election and they are breaking records of the votes that they got, it beat the hell out of me. I'm a sportsman, so I know that any given Sunday, any team can beat anybody. It's all about, in cricket parlance, it's about 1 dropped catch, 1 run out. Into NFL scenario, 1 interception, 1 fumble. So changes the outcome of the game. But this was not a 2-minute drill. This was a 2-year battle. And the weakest candidates come in and they set a record with the voting that has happened. What do you think? What happened?
Mr. Jha, you're absolutely right. First of all, thanks for inviting me with the rest of the guests here. I'm shocked myself. I have been here for the last 40 years. I have seen so many presidential elections. And here we have a president who has hardcore base that they will die for him. They would stand in cold at 9:30 p.m. in Wisconsin for 2 hours. And it's a whole day process to stay there. And then he went to Grand Rapids on the last day at 10:30 p.m., had 50,000 his supporters waiting for him. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, we have Vice President Joe Biden, who was in the basement for, I would say, 50 days out of 60 of the last 2 months. And someone tells me that this person who was getting 1% votes in primaries every time he ran. We all remember 12 years ago when Vice President Biden ran against Obama and company, he actually dropped out very early on because he was getting only 1% votes. 4 years prior to that, the same thing happened. And Kamala Harris also had to leave primary pretty soon after getting 1 to 2% votes. So these two people combined, who actually had 2% votes of United States, they are getting 51% electoral votes, is shocking. And if we look at the popular vote of 2020, Biden and company have received roughly 72.1 million votes, highest ever in any presidential election by any candidate. I mean, that does not sound okay to me. People who stayed in the basement and never received more than 1% votes in primary are breaking all the records. Something is fishy, but of course, I don't want this election to be what JFK's story has been since 1964, that we have so many theories who killed JFK. I want this election result to be taken seriously. If for whatever reason someone did a little bit of voting fraud, I have no proof of it, and I don't want to believe into that either. There may be or may not be, but it just doesn't sound okay to me that people who were getting 1% votes are breaking all the records. I can also believe some people that there was a negative voting, but there's a rule that there cannot be negative voting so much that you can actually break all the records. Does not happen that way. So something definitely fishy is going on. But if tomorrow Supreme Court or court or someone tells me that Mr. Biden won, I would accept that. I think we need to preserve the democratic process and the election process of this country. There will be some court dragging, and recounting may take a month or a little bit more than a month before we find out the final result. But that's okay with me. I think President Trump should be very happy that 4 years ago, he came out of nowhere, never spent a single day in politics, and knocked off so many Republican candidates in the primary and knocked out Hillary Clinton and became president of United States. I think that should be a very motivating factor and happiness for him.
Yes, indeed. And what must be, he's a bad loser. He admits he's a bad loser. And he said what he's not able to accept, that he beat back 17 strong Republican establishment guys, and then he beat the queen who was awaiting a coronation. And now he's getting beaten by a 78-year-old man who doesn't have any checkered career in his career, political career. The one thing that he has very famous for is his incarceration of the blacks, the crime bill that he passed. And it's funny that while Biden was responsible for the incarceration of blacks through his crime bill, Mr. Trump took care of that problem by passing the crime bill to take care of that issue. So, but what is interesting, and I will come to Rakesh on that, is that blacks and Latinos voted for him so powerfully in Texas and Florida. These two states are red states, and look at how efficiently the results were taken care of there and how they handled that part. And look at the Democratic states. It doesn't smell good, but be that as it may, matters will unfold. But I have another set of inquiries with you, because you have been in the CEO, you have been data gatherer, you have run enterprises, you have been an entrepreneur, and you still do that. Death of pollsters. Would you agree that the polling business as a business is dead in America. Because Wisconsin, they were talking that Biden is winning by 17%. It is blue. Even till the election day, it was 10 points lead for Biden. As if the data was, God knows where the data was coming from. Is this the end of polling as a business, a casualty of 2020? Rakesh?
So I think it's broader than that, in the sense that any election needs popes to anoint the ruler. And in modern society, these popes are, they start with pollsters, these are the astrologers. You have the media anoints you, then the legislature anoints you. So it's a process of gaining legitimacy as a ruler. I think it's fair to say that it's not just the pollsters, the trustworthiness, and other respected panelists have commented on that. The trustworthiness of the entire system has sunk to an abysmally low level. And whether it's pollsters or whether it is media reporting on stories, some real, some not so real, whether it's the actual state election apparatus, which Rakesh Sharma ji touched upon, whether it is the spike in Wisconsin electoral numbers that was touched upon, I think trustworthiness has dropped precipitously. So one conclusion you can reach is that the next president is not just weak. He may have 73 million votes, but he will not have a mandate. He will not have a following. So we are looking at a weak presidency hobbled by its powers being clipped by a Senate. The Democratic Party, I think, will actually undergo a bloodbath because there will be now a complete split which will come out in the open between the left, socialist, Islamist wing and the centrist. They managed to put a centrist face, but now the left and Islamists will fight that. The first casualty may be from your state, Vibhu, Senator Chuck Schumer, and Alexandra Cortez may go after his head. So there'll be a lot of headhunting going on internally within the Democratic Party.
I totally agree with you, because there was another video that came out, actually. It was on a WhatsApp conversation between Bernie Sanders and his four lovely ladies, which is popularly known as a squad, in which Bernie was preaching to them and telling them that we have negotiated, we have managed concessions from Biden, but once he becomes the president, we have to take him to our domain and we have to demand more and more and more. That is a very emphatic demand, and that's something that you are talking about, Rakeshji. I'm talking about Mr. Kaul. You are talking about, and I do suspect, I do believe, I totally agree with you, that's my analysis as well, that these four squad members are not going to keep quiet. I remember when President Trump, in his last State of the Union address, when he said that we will never let America become a socialist state, two people who got up and applauded him was Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. So think about it. The moment Biden made a statement, no, I will not do fracking, AOC had an instant tweet, fracking is bad. So these people are right on there, to use the proverbial butt, with their agenda. But having said that, Mohan, I'm coming to you now at this point in time, is that what do you see the impact of the election going to courts? Fortunately, in the American context, there is a 3-month gap between the election and the presidential swearing in on January 20th. So there is a December 6th deadline, there is a January 6th deadline, and there is January 20. Do you think that the judicial process will work? Rakesh Kaul mentioned that it will be a remarkably weakened presidency. Will Trump's presidency through the route, through the legal route, be deemed, make him stronger, other than the fact that he fought and regained his crown? How do you see that play out, this legal battle?
So the way I see it is there are multiple institutions. If one institution falters, so right now there are people who have questions about democracy here, how the elections went, if there is fraud. So we have a second institution that's going to take up the case, the Supreme Court. And I think they will do a right job if a proper case is presented on where the fraud is, and if that is truthful, it turns out to be truthful, or if it is not truthful, whatever the case is, then I think Supreme Court will give the right judgment, and that will set the path forward. I think after they're going to start with the 1 or 2 states and eventually expand that further to the whole country. And I'm hoping that this might probably even pave the path for verification of IDs and citizenship. And maybe we'll have a better democracy from next time. So that's my hope.
That's a very well put. Because every disaster is an opportunity, right? And this disaster must teach us a lesson if we are educated, smart, intelligent, as we claim to be. I'm talking about when we say I talk about America, not we as individuals alone. So I think there is a lesson to be learned here, is to fix things, fix things and address the issues. And that's very important. The other part which comes about is about the impact and implication. So Bhavani, I'll come to you with the impact and implication of this election. So let's assume for a moment, one of the reasons why the Indians have been very active in this campaign, in this election time, has been the Biden Democratic Party's agenda of trying to lecture India on human rights, be it on Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh, about 370, about 35A, restore 370 in Kashmir, and bring about CAA as if India was alone responsible for all of it. Whereas Kamala Harris and Biden are talking about lecturing India when America itself, our own country, has serious problem of racial discrimination here. It's not over. So the question here is that does America have any business to tell India how they should manage their own democratic processes, and a process that has been overwhelmingly approved by the parliament of the country? So it is like Kadapa or Chikmagalur or Jhumri Talaiya passing a resolution on discrimination of Black in this country. Did we take it too seriously? Were we too immature to react, or just we should have let it go? What do you see the impact and implication of a Biden presidency on India-US relationship, considering that Mr. Modi in international relations, personal equation allows a lot of things to happen. You fight for your country, but you let a lot of things gets accomplished. What do you think about Biden presidency and Kamala Harris's reminder to Kashmir that we know you, we are with you? I'm sure Rakesh ji is not happy with that statement. Bhavani, your call.
Yeah, this is actually, I feel that it would have far-reaching consequences. If you remember, Modi and Trump had established a very nice rapport. And when the Red Dragon came knocking at our northern door, and the Green Monster, Pakistan, came on our northwestern front, he had battleships sent over, and stationed in the Bay of Bengal, and he also sold India F-16s and whatever military hardware was required right away. He took immediate action, and his stand, just the way he's there. So, and that helped India at that point, to fight off the Chinese aggression, and it made them sort of see reason. Going forward, Mr. Biden has a lot of ties with China, yeah, and he has been an internationalist while he was with President Obama. That was his job at that point. And he's, as I said, he has established a lot of ties with China. So I think he would have a much softened stance, where Chinese relations are concerned. Well, so that doesn't bode well for India, because India needs somebody to whom she can rely on, and whom she can call as a friend. So we don't know going forward. I don't know how that stance is going to work out. Also, as far as Pakistan is concerned and the Kashmir issue, when Article 370, um, India was told, as you said, in no uncertain terms, that this was not the right thing to do, and that there was human and people were not being treated fairly. There was a cause for concern, and that is as far as Kashmir. And then they also took umbrage at the Citizenship Act, which the CAA, which India was trying to implement, not knowing that it was actually helpful for those refugees who were Hindu refugees who were coming over the border to India from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, and from surrounding areas. So it was intended to help them. And so they were just looking at things on the surface. In fact, I think you all remember there was a little snippet which was sent over, I think it made to a lot of WhatsApp groups, in which Kamala Harris was actually, Senator Harris was telling Pakistan, we go between Pakistan and India, we're going to have Pakistan come and talk about the Kashmir issue. And when a bully is doing something in the playground and bullying somebody, they tell the victim nobody is watching, so nobody is going to come to help, but we are watching. I remember, there was a video like that, we are watching. So I'm a little anxious.
If you allow me to interject here, I would say that a lot had India-US relationship has moved many dimensions, strategic partner, oldest democracy, but it began to see some definite move forward during Modi's becoming prime minister and Trump coming here. But prior to that also, in the democratic leadership as well, it is not that India was ignored. So I would say that, okay, there will be a slowdown with reference to India's candidacy of United Nations Security Council or the nuclear supplier group. But there are certain geopolitical elements will not change. Because there is a thing called establishment. Remember, Obama could not shut down Guantanamo. Could not, or he did not, for whatever reason. So at the geopolitical level, there is a short-term, immediate term, and long-term. In the short term, what is going to happen is that the forces antithetical to India will try to draw their blood. And they may get some. But the long term, United States cannot ignore India in that Indo-Pacific region. That region is known as. So whether it's Biden or whether it is, and Rakesh ji very correctly pointed out, that because of the Senate being in Republican hands, there a lot of maneuverability has gone to effect changes of the kind, because Senate will always be there to protect that part of it. So I think India has to be disappointed that the party ended and if Trump doesn't win the thing through legal process as well. But I think Biden and team would be so embroiled in handling local matters that foreign policy will suffer actually, even though it will demand their attention. So Rakeshji, I wanted to ask you also about the fact that because Rakesh Kaul Sahab mentioned about the establishment of Indian diaspora in the political sense in this country, where do you see Indians go from here? In my opinion, to preface that question is, I see that at last, I have been seeing this from 1991 onwards, at last Indians have a clout. There is a recognition of us as contributors to the society. And I often say that that the Americans love us as immigrants to this country because we belong to a professional group, educated group, we have family values, we have, we take care of our children, we are least problem on the law and order side, and and we are the highest median income, we work hard, and we ask for nothing. Now is our time to ask whether the second generation steps in or the first generation guides them. Where do you see Indians playing a role in American mainstream politics?
Is that question directed to me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Uh, I think we are making too much out of this change in presidential leadership. Yes, with President Trump, we enjoyed a lot. When I say we, I mean the Indian government, Modi government. So India doesn't need to worry about Biden and company, as you rightly pointed out. Foreign policy does not change much as far as USA is concerned. It's not up to one person or two people that suddenly they will take a U-turn. I don't think Biden and even Kamala Harris are going to be friends with Pakistan tomorrow. There's a difference. When you are in opposition, you can talk any trash that you want to. Once you're in a position of leadership, you know the responsibility, and you also understand what your nation benefits from. So Biden and Kamala Harris are not going to take any step which is anti-American. In America's own interest, they are better off extending their hand towards India and not looking towards Pakistan. We all understand that. And that's number one. It's because they want to counter China. And number two, India is a big economical opportunity for US companies. We have 400 million middle-class people. That's more than the population of United States. So Pakistan has nothing to offer. They are a bankrupt country. And number two, good thing is that in the last few years, USA and Western countries have understood that they have been on the wrong side for 5 decades, and Pakistan is nothing but a major terrorist exporting nation. So we don't need to worry about whether Biden has few Muslim people in his government or not. As far as China is concerned, yes, President Trump has been very tough with China, and Biden and his government is not going to be. So India has to play a little better role to keep USA on its side as far as China is concerned. So knowing Prime Minister Modi, he's a smart man. He may have been very close to President Trump, but at the same time, I think he knows how to play the game. Vice President Biden, if he becomes President Biden, knows very well what Modi is capable of and what India stands for. So I don't think they will change their policy suddenly overnight. And yes, President Biden, if he becomes president, is not going to be tough. I think some of his policies will be run by other Democrats from behind the scene. And somehow we will miss President Trump in case he loses the election.
Okay, I agree that because the personal equations matter a lot. However, I will also add here is that I am not very worried on that count. And my thought process is that Kamala Harris, the way she has emerged as a political opportunist to advance her career, and I wish her well, further well, she will tell those donors for whom she spoke for, thank you for your money and thank you for your votes. Now sit aside, let me win the next election by myself, then we'll think about handling India. Most likely that's what is going to happen. I think Indians, we have, the one thing which I do believe, that Republicans and Democrats cannot ignore the power of NRIs in this country anymore. The important part here is how do we manage that equation? Because we have generally been very reticent to assert ourselves as politically. Even we are even shy to say that we are proud Hindus in this country. So Islamist people kill, then the statement is that not all Muslims are terrorists. But one Hindu guy says, I'm a Hindu, he becomes a nationalist, and we have to change that narrative. Rakeshji, you are an author, thinker, writer. How do you think that narrative needs to be restated?
So a couple of points. First point regarding the US and India. Folks have to understand that India is no longer India. India today is the only mighty nation that stands between China and the complete capitulation of all of the countries in South Asia. If these countries perceive the slightest reduction of American support to India, you think Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia, Taiwan, other countries will show any resistance? No, there'll be complete capitulation. Let's not mistake, India is not a threat to America. America has a different competitor. America needs India more badly than India needs America. Let's be very clear who needs who, and that should let us sleep peacefully at night on that score. Now let me talk about Kashmir. On Kashmir, there is a section of the Democratic Party that is vicious. And this vicious section will create a lot of problems, first in the grassroots state councils and assemblies, where they will race to have resolutions passed against India. These have no significance, but they do create a perception that Americans are against India. And on this score, I would strongly recommend that these 100+ voter elected officials of Indian origin, we as a community have got to get them to be part of what I call a Kashmir caucus. And this Kashmir caucus, we really have to get the Rokhannas of the world and others to understand that we are becoming a growing force. And on Kashmir, we're going to draw the line. We're not going to permit that horror show that happened in Congress with Pramila Jayapal, Ilhan Omar again. And for that, frankly, we have to reach out to the Democratic supporters of Indian origin. Maybe 60% of the Indian community voted Democratic. Well, they have to now become watchdogs. And that's as simple as it is. We all have friends who are Democrats. And we have to say to them, great, if your guy won, now you have to turn into watchdogs and make sure that your guy doesn't come and bite us. So I think we are past the issue of, is it Trump versus Biden? Now we have to act as a community and say, whoever wins, his supporters now have to become watchdogs. And on Kashmir, we need to move into a watchdog stance. The third point, which is the point that you asked about us as Indians and specifically as Hindus, there's no question that there is a section that is very anti-Hindu. Unfortunately, it's to be found in both political parties. So let's not be short-sighted and think it's only in the Democratic Party. that you see anti-Hindu sentiment. There's a section, the Republican Party, that's also anti-Hindu. And there is no substitute to becoming politically more active as a Hindu. And just as the Jewish people confront anti-Semitism, we have to confront anti-Hinduism. And I'll end by saying all of these forces who are against us on Kashmir, against us as Hindus, they're also against Israel. So Israel is going to have the same forces arrayed against them. So it's imperative that we continue to strengthen our relationships with the Jewish community because we will have common cause with them.
Thank you. Thank you. Mohan, I wanted to talk to you about, that this is the last question for this program now. As always, every conversation has to come to an end, and we will have more conversation as we build ourselves as a community in this part of the world. So, defense tie-ups, the establishment is very powerful in America. I don't think they will allow Biden to say or do things against India. So how do you see defense tie-ups? Because for India, there is a very important message to be conveyed to America. You mess with us on our relationships and our relationship, and you revert back to God knows whatever era that you lived in, pro-Pakistan, pro-China, anti-India stand, we change our shop from you to Russia back again. There are enough number of suppliers that we have. Rafale jets have come from, fighter jets have come from France. So there is no end of defense suppliers. The US is going to be huge loser. Do you think, since you are working for Raytheon or the defense company, and share your thoughts. I'm not saying share your company secrets, but share your thoughts as an intelligent young man as to what do you think, what is the extent to which this relationship can be cemented to take advantage of geopolitical movement?
So first, let me say that this is strictly my opinion. It has nothing to do with my profession or my company or anybody else. So said that, I think today, America certainly needs India a lot more than India needs America. I think Rakesh ji already mentioned the same thing. So since 1971, we have actually lost 40 years because of the position that America took. And it took a lot of time to build this relationship and have the defense relationship. That takes really a very, very slow and painfully long time. So will it go back very quickly? It probably won't change that drastically, but it will take a few steps back, which in my opinion is not good because we have been taking forward steps. So with Trump, I was anticipating that we'll have a closer bond and we'll take several steps forward. So let's say we're taking 4 steps forward and we take 2 steps back, we are already 6 steps in deficit. I think that's where the relationship is going to go. And the other concern is if America is going to fund, say, Pakistan, or just not support us at the right moment, that creates a big vacuum, and we go back to having relationship with Russia, France, and everybody else. So that I think is really bad for American defense industry. So let's see where the Biden policy is going to be.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. I will just ask you one question, quick, say yes or no. Legal battle or otherwise, who is likely to be the next president? Just the name. Mohan.
Trump.
Bhavani.
Trump.
Rakesh Kaul sahab.
Biden.
Rakesh Sharma ji.
50-50.
But there was one thing which was very important. I must say this. I mean, Rakesh ji also said, all of you said that India doesn't need America as much as America needs India. That's a very powerful thing. And we have to remember as a community, as a country, that regardless of who is there, we have to remain engaged in the process. We have to make a distinction between long-term strategy and transactional equations. And we have to remain very conscious of the fact that we don't sleep on the wheel. Just because America needs me more than I need America should not lull us into complacency. And that's my message to the Indian community here and back home in India as well. Take nothing for granted. You have to take a penalty shot. You don't shoot over the bar. You don't score. So with these words, I want to thank all of you individually as my friend to be on the program today. And we will have more discussions later. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the viewers enjoyed it. Thank you for being with us. Have a great weekend. Whoever wins presidency, let's remain engaged in the process and make ourselves be known, heard, seen, and felt. Thank you.